What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2019 Chevy Camaro RS V6 1LE. Huge thanks to Shyam for providing me with his brand new 1LE Camaro here to review for you guys today. So about the 1LE version. So yeah, it's been a couple of years since I reviewed a Camaro, and they did get some tweaks here to the front end and the back end for the 2019 model year. And I think that in general, it looks much better on the V6 ones than it does on the SSs. And then Chevy very quickly redid the front end for the 2020 model year, so now those look better as well. But I think it actually looks really cool here on the V6. So you still have the body painted center part there, and I like that new grille, the way that it's kind of concave, and looks very aggressive still, especially the 1LE package here amps everything up. So obviously mechanically you have a lot of the same parts from the SS, but you also have a lot of really nice visual cues here to stand out from a normal V6 Camaro, such as the satin black hood, which is a very cool touch. You also have these larger 20-inch wheels instead of the normal 18s you usually get on V6 Camaros, and so those look great. And you also have some wider tires in the back as well that go along with the 1LE package here. You also have the black mirrors, and you have the black spoiler there in the back. And then going out to the back, you see those tail lamps there. Now these are the optional smoke tail lamps, but I love that new tail lamp design. It's a little retro looking, but I think it's a lot more exciting looking than the more bland taillights you got in the previous model years of the Camaro here. And so overall, the Camaro is still such an aggressive and just very sharp looking vehicle. It's so lean. I think the Camaro still looks really just angry and really stands out on the road. Right, so for the interior of the Camaro here. So, I've covered this several times before in my previous Camaro reviews, but it still is very nice. They didn't do any changes really for 2019 here, but so this is the 1LT trim. So you have the cloth seats here that are really nice. You can still option in the Recaros if you would like, but that is, over $1,000 upcharge. And these cloth seats these standard seats are still really great. They have good torso support to them, good thigh support, and you're sitting nice and low in the Camaros. I really love the seating position. It's so much sportier than what you get with the Mustang and with the Challenger. And so great seats. They're not heated or cooled or anything, but you can get that as an option if you go up to the higher trims as well. Next though is the steering wheel here, which is also great in the Camaros. And for the 1LE version here, you have the Alcantara wrapping for the steering wheel. Also, you can see that on the shifter. And so it's nice. I think Alcantara, I don't love the way that it wears, but it does feel very cool. And the wheel in these Camaros has always been great. It's a nice smaller wheel, flat bottom, and he also even added a little 1LE badge here that doesn't come from the factory, but it should, because that's a really nice little extra piece here on the interior to set it apart. But just a few buttons here on it, and some nice metal trim around it as well. And so overall, just a great wheel. Has a nice 9-3 grip and everything. Gauges here in the Camaros. Now again, since we are in the 1LT, it's going to have the smaller screen there in the middle instead of the larger digital portion you get in the higher trims, but that's okay, because this smaller screen still does most of the same stuff. It's just not as pretty in the way that it does it, but you still have like a G meter and a lot of your temperatures and things like that are all displayed there, so that's good. It gives you all that information. The actual analog dials themselves are clear and good. They're not super exciting or anything, but get the job done fine, and so no complaints really there. Coming over to the center here, you have the great 8-inch Chevrolet Mylink Display, and it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. Chevy was one of the first to have the smartphone integration several years ago, and so great they still have it. This screen is also super responsive. This is the newest generation of the software that they have, and so you can swipe over to see kind of like a condensed view and the maps and stuff if you had that, and very easy to navigate through all that. You don't have a tune knob, but you do have tune rockers, and you do have a nice large volume knob, so that's always great to have. Coming down, I still love the way they do the climate controls here in the Camaro too. You have just a few buttons here, and then I love how you just turn the entire trim around the vent there in order to change the temperature. It's a really cool way to save space and eliminate extra knobs and stuff, and I wish more companies would copy that, honestly, because I still think that's a great idea. But you will see, there isn't as much storage space as you usually get with the Mustang and the Challenger. So you do have a little small pocket here in the door, but not large enough for a bottle or anything. Then coming over to the center though, you just have two cup holders and then the center armrest, which it does have some padding to it. It feels great. But then you open that up, and then you'll see just a tiny little cutout here above, and then this this little lower portion that, as you can see, can fit some gum and stuff, but that's about it. You can't fit a smartphone or anything in there, unfortunately. So small, and so that's the only downside. I mean, you do have 2 USB jacks and auxiliary jack in there, so as far as hookups go, you're good with all that. Unfortunately, it just doesn't have a ton of space there. You do have a bin though behind the back seat there, and so that's nice if you want additional space. And in the higher trims, that is also a wireless charging pad back there, and in this one it's just a nice large bin. So good that they have something there. Just would be nice if they would have incorporated here into the center armrest. But yeah, and other things, so even though we are in the base trim, it still is pretty nice. I mean, you do have some harder plastics up here and stuff, but they're not too bad. And he actually did upgrade a few things you can get from Chevy, like for example this padding here didn't come with the 1LT's standard, but this one does have it. He added that in. He also added in the knee padding here, which is a really nice touch, because if that was all hard plastic, it would feel a little cheaper in here. But nice, you can get those pieces, so if you do value that kind of stuff, you don't have to go up to a leather fully loaded vehicle in order to get those types of nice touches. And so overall, the Camaro interior is cozy, but I still think it works very well. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Camaros here have the newer Chevy key, which is a really nice key. It has a little raised emblem there, and then on the back you have just a few buttons, but it's a nice weight and not too big. And so I really appreciate that the key isn't massive like some other keys are these days. And so anyway, of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it roars to life. All right, so setting off here in the Camaro V6. So the first thing I think I'm noticing is, the visibility is always one of the dominating things of the Camaro. So it is not as good as the Mustang or the Challenger, but it's not too bad. And I've said this in my other Camaro reviews. It's, just smaller windows, but you get used to it fairly quickly, and I don't think it's a big deal. But, view out of the back and stuff is a little slimmer than what you usually get with Mustangs and other vehicles like that. So, but actually, the owner of this vehicle used to own a Mustang. He's already gotten used to, the smaller windows here in the Camaro, so I really don't think it's a big deal. And, I actually had a 4-cylinder Camaro for a week, and I had no problems over the course of a week either. So, not a big deal, but just something to note. Another thing that I'm noticing right off the bat here is that it's so easy to use the clutch and the shifter as well. So, clutch is nice and light, very predictable. So, for first-time manual buyers, this is going to be pretty easy to drive off the lot and learn. The shifter is also pretty precise. It is a little easy to go from second to fifth instead of third sometimes, but that's the only thing that I just did the first time I hopped in this. Otherwise, though, it is very precise. I've always loved the manual shifters here in the Camaros. They're always really, really good. They're a little annoying in the SS because you have the skip shift thing sometimes, but other than that, it's a really great feeling shifter. Nice and notchy, has a nice weight to it and everything. All right, so we have the dual mode exhaust in its track mode. Let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Oh, it sounds so good. And it picks up and goes really well. Honestly, with this performance exhaust, it kind of actually sounds like a 370Z or something, although it's a little bit even different than that, but it sounds similar. Little tunnel burble there, but yeah, it sounds really, really good, and it goes very well too. So this runs the same 3.6 liter V6 from the normal Camaro that I already reviewed a couple of years ago, but in this, it's the same power, 335 horsepower, and then you have 284 pound-feet of torque, but you do get that dual mode performance exhaust, which is something you don't get with the standard V6s, and so that is part of this 1LE package. There's all kinds of nice improvements for the 1LE package, which I'll get into more once we're on some curvier back roads, but it's a good amount of power, 5.2 seconds for the 0 to 60, and so it's right up there with the EcoBoost Mustangs and stuff. I mean, those might have a little more punch because you have the higher torque figures and it kind of comes on earlier. This motor likes to rev, but thankfully with GM you have your choice. You can have a 4-cylinder, you can have the V6 or the V8, so it's great they still have this V6 around, and I mean, it sounds way better than the EcoBoost do and the 4-cylinder Camaros as well. So if you care about sound at all, the V6 I think is just a little over $1,000 upcharge, maybe $1,500, well worth it for the much better sound in my opinion, and also for the more fun character, because the Turbo 4s are great because they have boatloads of power down low, but if you actually enjoy driving and wringing out a car, this V6 I think is a lot more rewarding. All right, so now we're on some curvier back roads here, and we can test out the handling. And the handling in the Camaros has always been fantastic. And then, you know, even in the SS versions, it's fantastic. And then you take some weight off the nose here with the V6, or with the 4-cylinder especially, and then you have just even better handling. And adding in the 1LE package just amps that up even more. So, I mean, these weigh just over 3,500 pounds here in the V6 1LE trim. And at that weight, you know, it is pretty light. I mean, considering like my Bullet, for example, weighs like 3,850, you're talking a full, you know, at least 300 pounds lighter for this. And then you have, you know, the Camaro just on the Alpha platform here is just such a more lively chassis, and it's so much sharper. And you know, I've always said over the past several years, when all these 3 muscle cars came out for this current generation, that the Camaro was the best handling one, hands down. And that, I think, is certainly the case, and just continues on here with these new enhancements for the 1LE package. And the 1LE SS was fantastic, that I reviewed a couple years ago as well. And so this 1LE package is a little bit different than what you get with the SS 1LEs. So the SS 1LEs borrowed some bits from the ZL1 and had magnetic ride control and stuff. You don't have the magnetic ride control in this, but you do have a performance-tuned suspension, but it's not as customizable. You know, it's just basically just a sportier suspension setup, and that's it. But it really feels great. I mean, again, it's been a few years since I've reviewed a normal V6 Camaro, but this certainly feels a little more buttoned down than those do. You also have better grip from these tires. So these are run flat summer tires, but they're 245 in the front, which is what you get normally on V6s, but you now have 285s in the rear, so you have better grip there in the back. And so that helps put the power down, but it also gives you, of course, just a more stable ride than what you usually get with the V6s there. And so basically, the 1LE package here kind of gives you a lot of the SS hardware in these lower, you know, V6 versions and the 4-cylinder as well. And so, you know, that goes, first off, it has a bunch of extra cooling so that it can actually handle a track day, which is something that Ford seems to neglect doing a lot of times with their sportier versions. You know, you don't have enough cooling. This has the cooling, and so that is a great thing. You know, it has extra oil coolers, it has extra transmission oil coolers, all kinds of extra stuff to help for heavy-duty uses, and so that's great. You also have the Brembo Brakes off of the SS, and so those obviously give you a lot more stopping power than what you usually get with you know, normal V6 Camaro brakes. And these Brembos are really great. Now, there is a decent amount of travel to the pedal before you start getting some bite out of the brakes, so they're not super sensitive, at least in my experience here. And this vehicle only has less than 3,000 miles, so they're not like worn down or anything. It's just the way they tuned it, so that it's not quite as delicate as it is in some of the other vehicles. But another acceleration here just for fun. Sounds so good. I got a little bit of chirping there going on, but it puts the power down really, really well. And I love this sound. And I kind of miss it from, you know, the Mustangs and stuff that used to run V6s. But other things here to note, the throttle response is about the same as it has been. A couple years ago, I talked about how, you know, there is a little bit of a tip-in point before you start getting some acceleration. I think the V6s feel a little bit better in this area than the V8s do, because the V8s felt a little more dead with their throttle. This feels a lot sharper to me now, and does feel really, really good. Other things here, so now, you know, there's several different modes for the exhaust, and so you can change that independent of the drive modes or have it tied to the drive modes. But we currently are just running in track, and it'll actually save between key cycles and just always stay in track mode, for example, if you want. And but you can also customize the steering feel based on either drive mode again, or you can set that up separately. But we're just in the touring mode because, again, since there isn't any real changes to the suspension in the different drive modes, you know, the steering actually feels really nice in the tour mode. We can go ahead and try, there's sport and track. You don't get the snow and wet mode here on the 1LEs. So sport gives you a little more weight and feels good too. I don't think it's overly heavy or anything, but that is, you know, a nice option if you do want a little more steering weight. And then you can also go up the track, and maybe it's a tiny bit stiffer. They're not huge changes here, but I do think that touring kind of exaggerates the car's eagerness to dive in, because it really does want to dive into corners. You have so much grip here that it really feels eager. Now, I will say, so I recently did do a quick drive in the EcoBoost High Performance, and that one had the handling package, which has 265 wide tires all around. And comparing this to that, again, I only had about 20 minutes in that, so not as much experience as I've had with the Camaros in the past. But I will say that I think, obviously, you have a little more front end grip in those, and they feel a little more autocross friendly than this does. But this also feels very tossable as well. And weight figures are very similar between the two at that point. But personally, I do like the tour mode here for the steering. It really does feel very eager. And honestly, you know, the more that I kind of jerk around the steering wheel here, it does feel very, very similar to the EcoBoost High Performance. I'd have to drive both back to back to really do a good comparison, but they feel very, very similar. And considering the deals on Camaros, and you can probably get one of these a whole lot cheaper than an EcoBoost High Performance too. It's awesome though that, you know, even though it's only a V6 and, you know, it still has pretty sticky tires, it still can chirp those tires. It's pretty impressive, and that just goes to show how strong this V6 really is. And so yes, you can, you know, stare at a spec sheet all day and, you know, make judgments about it just, you know, based on the numbers. But I think whenever you look at this, you know, beyond the numbers, and you actually drive one, it's a really good alternative to so many vehicles. I mean, I think this is a great modern alternative to the 370Z for people who, you know, are coming out of 350Zs or 370Zs, but they want a newer vehicle, a safer vehicle, and, you know, just want, honestly, a better handling vehicles. The 370Zs are great vehicles, but they can get a little snappy and be a little more edgy, and that's fun. But I think the Camaro actually still has just as much of a handling fun factor while still having more grip and a little more of a stable demeanor to them, that I prefer this over the 370Zs. And also, I mean, honestly, you know, you can compare this even to the new Supra. Obviously, the Supra's got like 80 more pound-feet of torque, so as far as straight line performance goes, the new Supra is going to be much faster. But as far as handling goes, honestly, they're actually very similar visibility-wise. The Supra visibility isn't great either, and so it's actually kind of a fairly similar feeling from behind the wheel as far as that whole you know, driving position and visibility stuff goes. But you know, I think the Supra is livelier with its handling as well. This has I think a little bit more of a predictable character, but I think you know, it's a very compelling package that, again, you can get one of these for, you know, easily 15 to 20 grand less than a Supra, especially with the Supra markups currently going on and stuff. You know, it might even be more of a $30,000 difference depending on the deal you get. But you know, I don't know if the Supra is 30 grand more car unless you're obsessed with straight line performance. In that case, you can go get an SS Camaro for the same money as the new Supra if you know, want all that extra power and stuff, and you can still have the 1LE handling package and all that kind of stuff, and you know, keep up with it that way. But I really think this is a sweet spot in the Camaro lineup. The SS is great, and if you want, you know, the most power possible, then you know, that's a great option as well. But for someone who wants to save a little bit of money on gas and wants to save a little bit of money on the MSRP as well, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting the V6. I certainly prefer this over the 4-cylinder. The 4-cylinder is okay, but I'm not in love with it. This motor, it has a lovable character, it has a lovable sound, and it's just a really, really well done package. And the fact that they're now offering the 1LE package for those who want the extra grip to go along with those good sounds and stuff just makes it an even more compelling package, and really helps to bolster the idea that the V6 can be just as much of a performance car as the SS. So a vehicle like this, the way it's configured, you know, would be a little over $33,000, like maybe $33,500. But you know, they have so many deals on Camaros, and so if you shop around and, you know, the incentives are good depending on the time of the year and stuff, you can get one of these you know, in the mid to high 20s pretty easily. Some dealers are knocking at least $5 grand off, some even more, and so, you know, you can definitely, you know, get one of these well under $30,000, and you still have, again, well over 300 horsepower, tons of grip here with the 1LE package and everything. It's a lot of car for that money. You know, you consider even a brand new 370Z, if someone isn't actually buying a new 370Z anymore, but for those who are, even those are $30,000 now. So you know, you have a much newer car, you have a better, newer platform and everything. I think it's a really solid thing, and I honestly don't know why more people aren't buying Camaros, because even as a Bullitt Mustang owner, I still think the handling is hands down better than the Camaro. I think the looks are great now. I think everything about it is a really compelling package. And so, if you're someone who's looking for a really good, sports coupe that actually does have good handling, and you want something that's not quite as muscly as, the Mustangs and the Challengers, which are much larger, I think the Camaro is a really great option that's worth considering. And especially, so the 1LE version of the V6 series is a fairly new thing, but especially now, since we're here in 2019, almost 2020, you can get some of these earlier Camaros of this 6th gen version. You can get some of those for much more affordable prices as well, and that really just brings it down to an affordable level for just about every enthusiast out there. And so, yeah, I think these 6th gen Camaros are severely underrated. They were praised so much when they first came out, but then, like I said, just not as many people buying them as I think Chevy and even myself expected, honestly. And it's just so much of a better vehicle than you might even be expecting. So definitely worth test driving one of these if you're curious. But yeah, overall, I really love the Camaros, and the V6 1LE is a great addition. I'm sure the 4-cylinder 1LE is also great, and probably even a little bit lighter feeling. But with those, you have some turbo lag and stuff. I think the V6 is definitely the sweet spot as far as best handling Camaro probably goes, at least without going up to the ZL1s and crazy stuff like that. But yeah, so anyway, huge thanks to Shyam once again for providing me with his awesome V6 1LE Camaro here to review for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the Camaros here in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.